The rain in Chicago was brutal that night. It wasn't just raining, it was a full-on assault, coming down in sheets that hammered against the big windows of the Chicago General ER. Inside, it was the usual brand of controlled chaos. This was Dr. Eris Thorne's world. The constant beeping of monitors, the squeak of gurney wheels on linoleum, and the clipped, urgent voices of people trying to outrun death. She was 18 hours into a killer shift. Her body was a single, dull ache. Her feet were screaming, but her mind was still laser-focused. She was just about to sign off, to dream of her quiet apartment and 8 hours of uninterrupted sleep when the night's script got violently rewritten. A black, windowless van, the kind that screams, "I'm involved in illegal activities," flew into the ambulance bay, ignoring every sign and protocol. It skidded on the wet asphalt with a horrible, tire-shredding screech. The side door flew open, and two guys in black hoodies and masks unceremoniously shoved a body onto an empty gurney. It wasn't a gentle handoff, it was like they were dumping a bag of trash. Before any of the stunned security guards could even process what was happening, the van was gone, swallowed by the storm and the city's darkness. The body was a man, or what was left of one. He was soaked in a sickening mix of rainwater and his own blood, his clothes shredded into a red and black mess. Dr. Peterson, the attending physician, a man whose optimism had been surgically removed by decades in the ER, took one look inside. Multiple GSWs, torso, extremities, he's gone. No pulse, no respiration. Time of death, 10:47 p.m. He started to turn away, already mentally moving on to the next case. It was just another body in a city that produced them with industrial efficiency. But Eris saw it. A flicker. A tiny, almost invisible twitch in the man's eyelid. It was a ghost of a signal, a spark in an otherwise dark void. "Wait!" Eris's voice cut through the noise of the ER. It wasn't loud, but it had an authority that made people stop and listen. She pushed past Peterson, her gloved fingers immediately going to the man's neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. She pressed harder, her touch both firm and desperate. And then she felt it. A thread. A pulse so faint, so thready, it was more a memory than a reality. Thump, thump. Silence. Thump. "He's in deep shock, probably V-fib, but he's alive," she announced, her exhaustion vanishing in a massive surge of adrenaline. "I need an OR now!" Peterson actually scoffed. "Eris, get real. Look at him. He's a sieve. He's lost too much blood. He'll be dead before you get the elevator doors open. We've got 3 other criticals waiting, patients who actually have a chance." "Then they can wait 1 more minute," she shot back, her eyes locking onto his. This was a battle she'd fought with him and other doctors like him 12 times. The ones who played the odds instead of the patient. "This man isn't dead yet, and he's not dying on my watch." She looked at her team, the nurses who'd seen her pull off these kinds of crazy saves before, and trusted her gut. "Let's move. Get Lena Petrova on the phone. Tell her I have a John Doe who's trying to break the hospital record for surviving bullet wounds." Without waiting for another protest, Eris grabbed the gurney and started pushing it toward the elevators herself. A lone warrior, charging into a battle everyone else had already decided was lost. She didn't know who he was, why he was full of holes, or who had dropped him at her door like a problem to be solved. All she knew was that he had a flicker of life, and in her world, a flicker was a wildfire waiting to happen. The operating room was Eris's sanctuary. Under the bright, unforgiving glare of the surgical lights, the chaos of the ER melted away. All that was left was the focused hum of life support machines and the sound of a heart she was personally fighting to keep from stopping. "All right, people, let's get to work," Eris said, her voice calm and completely in charge. Her best friend, the anesthesiologist Dr. Lena Petrova, was already at the head of the table, her face a familiar mixture of awe and "you're insane." "Aris, this is nuts," Lena murmured, her hands skillfully managing the cocktail of drugs flowing into the man's system. "The scans came back. They lit up like a Christmas tree. I counted at least 24 bullets, maybe more." "Then we'll just have to be careful then," Eris replied, her scalpel already making the first clean, decisive incision. "Suction. Let's see what we're dealing with here." What followed for the next 6 hours was not just surgery, it was a masterclass in defiance. Eris worked with a ferocious, intense focus. Her hands, steady as a surgeon's hands could be, moved with a speed and grace that was mesmerizing to watch. She was a mechanic fixing the most complex engine in the world, a bomb disposal expert diffusing dozens of tiny, lethal devices lodged in flesh and bone. Bullet fragment near the subclavian artery. One wrong move and he bleeds out in 30 seconds, she narrated in a low murmur, more for herself than for the team. Forceps. Gently, gently, got it. One by one, she retrieved the twisted pieces of lead, dropping them with a metallic clink into a stainless steel bowl. The clinks became a grim count, a testament to the violence this man had endured. 10 bullets. 15. 20. She navigated a treacherous landscape of shredded muscle, nicked organs, and fractured bone. She bypassed a damaged section of his liver, clamped bleeders that seemed to erupt from nowhere, and painstakingly stitched together tissue that looked like it had been put through a meat grinder. The team around her worked in a state of breathless concentration, all of them fueled by her sheer, stubborn will. They were witnessing something they would talk about for the rest of their careers. At the 28th bullet, located dangerously near his spine, her hand finally cramped up. A sharp, searing pain shot up her forearm. She paused just for a second, wiggled her fingers inside her glove, and took a deep, steadying breath. "Shake it off, Thorn," she muttered to herself, so quietly no one could hear. Finally, there was only one left. The 30th bullet. It was lodged perilously close to his heart, a little metal time bomb. Taking it out was a huge gamble. Lena looked at her, her eyes wide with a silent plea to stop, to not risk it, to accept the victory they already had. Aris met her gaze, and in that silent look, a lifetime of friendship and trust passed between them. Aris gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. She was going in. With the delicacy of a watchmaker, she made the final extraction. The monitor, which had been beeping frantically for hours, settled into a steady, stable rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. The most beautiful sound in the world. She had done it. He was stable. Exhausted, drenched in sweat, but buzzing with triumph, she took a step back from the table, a weary smile touching her lips. The applause started with one nurse, then another, and soon the entire OR team was clapping, their faces etched with disbelief and admiration. But the sound was cut short by the swish of the automatic doors. Mr. Harrison, the hospital administrator, stood there. He wasn't smiling. He was a man who smelled of expensive cologne and bottom lines, and he looked at the scene not with wonder, but with the cold, calculating eyes of a risk assessment manager. "Dr. Thorn," he said, his voice dangerously quiet, "my office. Now." The celebratory atmosphere in the room instantly evaporated, replaced by a chilling silence. Eris looked from the man she had just pulled back from the brink of death to the administrator who looked like he wanted to push her right over it. The fight for the patient's life was over, but she had a sinking feeling her own fight was just getting started. Mr. Harrison's office was designed to make you feel small and insignificant. It had dark mahogany walls, plush leather chairs you sank into, and a sprawling desk that served as a barricade between him and the rest of the world. A lawyer from the hospital's legal department stood beside him, a woman with a face so devoid of emotion she might as well have been a robot. "Have a seat, doctor," Harrison said, pointing to a chair that felt like it was miles away from his desk. It was an order, not an invitation. Aris decided to stand. "I'm good. I've been on my feet for almost 24 hours saving a man's life. What's this about, Harrison?" Harrison's lips thinned into a bloodless line. His feigned politeness was gone. "This is about you completely ignoring hospital policy. It's about your reckless, unbelievable, and frankly, egotistical behavior tonight." He picked up a tablet from his desk and swiped a finger across it. "Let's go over the facts. You took a John Doe, a man with no identification, no medical history, and according to the on-duty attending physician, no viable chance of survival, and you decided to commandeer a surgical suite for a 6-hour vanity project." "A vanity project?" Eris's voice was incredulous. "I saved his life. He's alive because of what my team and I did in that room." All she could think about was the delicate work, the concentration, the victory. And he was calling it vanity. "He's alive for now," the lawyer cut in, her voice flat and cold. "And what happens when we find out who he is, Dr. Thorne? What if he's a wanted felon? A member of a cartel? What if the people who put 30 bullets in him decide to come back to finish the job, right here in our hospital? You didn't just operate on a patient, you exposed this entire institution, its staff, and its other patients to a massive, unknown liability." Harrison leaned forward, his voice dropping to an angry whisper. "We are a business, doctor. A multi-billion-dollar enterprise with a reputation to protect. Our insurance premiums are astronomical. One lawsuit, one scandal involving a rogue doctor operating on some mysterious gangster, and we could face financial ruin. You didn't think about that, did you? You only thought about yourself and your God complex." The injustice of it was a physical blow. Eris felt the blood rush to her face. "My ego? I am a doctor. I took an oath. My duty is to the patient in front of me, not to your insurance premiums or your damn reputation. There was a human being dying on that gurney, and I did my job. It's the only job I've ever wanted to do." "No," Harrison said, standing up to his full height, a self-satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "You did what you thought was your job. Your actual job, the one you are paid handsomely for, is to follow the protocols and procedures that keep this hospital and its thousands of employees safe. And you have failed, spectacularly." He straightened his tie, the picture of corporate authority. "Effective immediately, your employment at Chicago General is terminated. Your privileges are revoked. Security will escort you from the premises. You'll receive your final paycheck in the mail." Aris stared at him, speechless. Fired. For saving a life. It was a betrayal so profound, so fundamentally wrong. It felt like the world had tilted on its axis. The years of medical school, the crushing debt, the grueling residency, the thousands of lives she had touched, all erased by a man who saw a human being as a line item on a balance sheet. "You're making a huge mistake," she said, her voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "No, doctor," Harrison said, turning to look out his window at the sprawling city. "I'm correcting one." Two stoic security guards appeared at the door. They didn't touch her, but their presence was a suffocating weight. Wordlessly, Eris turned and walked out, past the pitying glances of nurses in the hallway, past the operating room where a man was breathing because of her. Each step was a hammer blow, shattering the life she had so carefully built. As she stepped out of the hospital doors and into the pre-dawn chill, stripped of her career and her purpose, she felt utterly and completely alone. The next day was a total fog. The storm outside had broken, but a tempest of confusion, anger, and humiliation still raged inside Eris. Her apartment, usually her cozy sanctuary filled with medical journals, and the comforting scent of coffee now felt like a prison cell. The silence was deafening, broken only by the incessant, angry buzzing of her phone on the coffee table. She ignored most of the calls. She couldn't handle the pitying "I'm so sorries" from colleagues who wouldn't dare challenge Harrison. Even if they disagreed with him, the only person she answered was Lena. "I still can't believe he did it," Lena's voice crackled with indignation over the phone. "The entire surgical floor is in shock. Maria, the head nurse, told me Harrison sent a memo around this morning about strict adherence to patient intake protocols. The nerve of that man." "He called it a vanity project, Lena," Eris said, her voice flat. She was staring at her own reflection in the dark screen of her television, a stranger with haunted eyes looking back at her. "He fired me for doing the one thing I'm actually good at." "This is wrong, Eris. You have to fight it. Get a lawyer. We'll all testify for you." "And say what?" Eris sighed, running a hand through her unkempt hair. "That I broke the rules and Harrison was right to fire me, even if it was for the wrong reasons? They'd crush us. I need a minute to think." She hung up, and the heavy silence rushed back in. She had spent her entire adult life on a singular path, becoming the best damn surgeon she could be. Now that path had crumbled into dust. What was she supposed to do now? Where was she supposed to go? She felt adrift, a ship without a rudder or a shore. She was contemplating the bleak absurdity of it all when she heard it. Knock, knock, knock. It wasn't a friendly knock. It was sharp, hard, and authoritative, the kind of knock that expected to be answered, and fast. Aris froze. She wasn't expecting anyone. Lena would have called or texted first. She walked slowly to the door, her heart starting a frantic rhythm against her ribs. She peered through the peephole and her blood ran cold. Two men in dark, identical, off-the-rack suits stood in the hallway. They were clean-cut, stone-faced, and radiated an aura of unnerving, bureaucratic power. Her hand trembled as she unlatched the deadbolt and opened the door a crack. "Dr. Aris Thorne?" the taller of the two men said. It wasn't a question. It was a confirmation. His eyes were like chips of ice. He held up a leather wallet, flipping it open to reveal a gold badge. "Special Agent Thorne, FBI, this is Agent Miller. May we come in?" FBI? The name Thorne was a bizarre, cruel coincidence that made her stomach clench. FBI? I don't understand. Agent Thorne's expression didn't soften. "We have some questions for you regarding the man you operated on last night." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle in the space between them like a physical object. "You're a person of interest in an ongoing federal investigation." And just like that, the world, which had been tilting for the past 24 hours, finally fell away completely. Her job was gone. Her reputation was in ruins. And now, standing on her doorstep, was the full, intimidating weight of the United States government. The stranger with 30 bullets wasn't just a medical mystery. He was something far more dangerous, and by saving his life, Aris had just dragged herself into the heart of the storm. Ben Carter's safe house was a dusty apartment above a closed-down laundromat in Pilsen. It smelled like stale cigarette smoke and desperation, but it was anonymous. For Aris and Elias, it was a sanctuary. The days that followed the hospital escape blurred into a routine of tense vigilance. Aris, stripped of her hospital, her tools, and her title, became a different kind of doctor. She changed Elias's dressings with supplies Ben had scrounged from a sympathetic pharmacy tech. She monitored him for infection with a cheap thermometer and her own trained eye. There were no nurses, no monitors, just her and the fragile life she was trying to hold together. "You're pretty good at this, even without all the fancy gadgets," Elias said one afternoon, his voice still raspy, but stronger than before. He was sitting up in a lumpy armchair, wincing as Aris checked a line of stitches on his shoulder. "It's what I do," she said simply, focusing on her work. "No," he insisted, looking at her with an intensity that made her pause. "What you did in that hospital, that was something else. You shouldn't be here. You should be celebrated, not hiding in a dump like this." The guilt hit him hard sometimes. She could see it in his eyes. He was the reason her life was in shambles. "We do what we have to do," she said, more to herself than to him. "You were doing your job when they came after you. I was just doing mine." Slowly they started to talk. He told her about his life as a journalist, the thrill of chasing a lead, the satisfaction of exposing a lie. He'd been working the Omnicorp story for over a year, following a trail of dirty money that led all the way to Senator Thompson's office. He'd known it was dangerous, but he hadn't realized how dangerous until that night in the parking garage when the black van had cornered him. Aris in turn told him about her brother, how he had died in a car accident years ago, bleeding out on the side of a highway while waiting for paramedics who got there just a few minutes too late. "That's why I don't give up," she explained, her voice quiet. "Ever. A few minutes, a flicker of a pulse, sometimes that's all you get. You have to take the chance." Elias just listened, his expression softening. He was seeing the woman behind the rogue doctor persona the world was being sold. A bond was forming between them, forged in shared danger and a mutual, stubborn refusal to back down. They were two different people from two different worlds, now stuck on the same sinking ship, trying to find a way to plug the holes before they both went under. Back at the FBI's Chicago field office, Agent Thorne was furious. The escape of his star witness, or as he saw it, his prime suspect's accomplice, was a massive embarrassment. "She played us!" he roared, slamming a file down on his desk. The office fell silent. The whole dedicated doctor routine was an act. She was in on it from the beginning. She stabilized him, then her crew broke him out. He turned to a board where Eris's and Elias's faces were pinned up. I want an APB out on her now. Dr. Eris Thorne. Consider her armed and dangerous. I want her face on every news channel and her name on every cop's computer in the state. Agent Miller stood by quietly, his face a careful, neutral mask. But inside, something wasn't sitting right. He remembered Eris in the interrogation room. She hadn't seemed like a criminal mastermind. She'd seemed terrified, angry, and railroaded. Later that day, acting on a hunch, Miller went into the FBI's records system. He ran a search on Omnicorp. The file was thin, heavily redacted, with several security flags he'd never seen before. That was odd for a major government contractor. Then he searched for reports related to Senator Thompson. He found a handful of sealed complaints from former staffers, all of them mysteriously withdrawn. The real discovery came when he pulled the hospital's security footage from the night of the escape. The doctor who had tried to enter Elias's room? Miller zoomed in on his face. He ran it through facial recognition. Nothing. The guy was a ghost. Then he noticed something else. The man's posture, the way he moved. It wasn't like a doctor. It was efficient, predatory. It was the walk of a hunter. Miller felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Thorne's theory was simple, clean, and made Eris the bad guy. But the evidence, the little things that didn't add up, pointed to something much bigger and much dirtier. The official story was starting to fall apart, and Agent Miller was beginning to suspect they were on the wrong side of the fight. A week later, Ben Carter showed up at the safe house, and he wasn't alone. With him was a nervous, pale-faced man in his late 20s who looked like he hadn't slept in a month. Eris, Elias, this is Leo, Ben said. Leo used to work in Omnicorp's accounting department. Leo wouldn't make eye contact. He just stared at his shoes. They made me do it, he whispered, burying the payments, coding them as consulting fees and R&D expenses. It was millions, all going to offshore accounts linked to Thompson. He told them how his conscience had started eating at him. He'd decided to record a meeting just for his own protection. A meeting where the CEO of Omnicorp and Senator Thompson were both present. I have it, Leo said, his hands shaking as he pulled a small, encrypted hard drive from his pocket. I recorded them. They talk about everything. The arms deal, the bribes. They even talk about handling the journalist problem. They talk about you, Elias. Eris, Elias, and Ben stared at the small piece of plastic in Leo's hand. It was the smoking gun. It was everything. We can't just leak it to the press, Ben said, his mind already working. They'll kill the story. Say it's a doctored recording, a fake. We need to go big. We need to go live. An idea began to form. Senator Thompson was scheduled to give a major keynote address at a downtown hotel in 3 days. It was a big press event, broadcast live on all the major networks. That's our stage, Ben said, a determined glint in his eye. We hijack their broadcast. We play the recording for the whole world to see right in the middle of his big speech. It was an insane, high-risk plan. They would have to get past Thompson's security, get access to the hotel's AV room, and do it all without getting caught. But as they looked at each other, the disgraced doctor, the hunted journalist, the cynical reporter, and the terrified accountant, they knew it was their only shot. They were done running. It was time to fight back. The ballroom of the Grand Sheraton was buzzing. Cameras flashed, journalists jostled for position, and the air was thick with anticipation. On the stage, a podium stood draped in American flags, waiting for the charismatic Senator Thompson. Eris felt invisible and terrifyingly exposed all at once. Dressed as a catering waitress with her hair tucked under a cap, she moved through the crowd, her heart hammering against her ribs. Her job was to be the lookout, the eyes on the ground. 2 floors up, in a cramped AV control room, Ben Carter, disguised as a technician, worked furiously. He'd managed to talk his way inside and was now trying to connect his laptop to the main broadcast feed without anyone noticing. Every click of his mouse felt like a gunshot. Outside, parked in an alley a block away, Elias and Leo sat in Ben's beat-up sedan, the getaway car. Elias held a burner phone, his thumb hovering over the call button to signal Ben when the time was right. Senator Thompson walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. He beamed, waving to the crowd, the picture of confidence and power. He began his speech, his voice smooth and reassuring, talking about integrity and national security. Aris watched him, a knot of ice in her stomach. Her phone buzzed. It was a text from Ben. Almost there, just need to bypass the final firewall. Just then, Aris saw him. The cleaner. He was standing near the back of the room, dressed in a sharp suit, his cold eyes methodically scanning the crowd. He wasn't looking at the stage, he was looking for them. Her blood ran cold. He saw her. Their eyes met for a split second, and a flicker of recognition crossed his face. He started moving towards her. "Ben, now! Do it now!" She hissed into the tiny microphone clipped to her collar. Upstairs, Ben slammed his fist on the enter key. On the massive screens on either side of the stage, Senator Thompson's smiling face suddenly vanished, replaced by the grainy, secret footage from Leo's recording. "The journalist Vance is a liability," the CEO of Omnicorp's voice echoed through the silent ballroom. "He needs to be handled. Permanently." Then, Senator Thompson's voice, unmistakable. "Leave it to me. We have people for that. The arms shipment is too important. No loose ends." Chaos erupted. The senator froze at the podium, his face a mask of horror. Journalists were shouting, cameras swiveling toward the screens. The cleaner abandoned subtlety and lunged for Aris, but before he could reach her, another figure stepped into his path. Agent Thorne, who had been standing with the senator's security detail, moved to arrest Aris, his face a mask of grim satisfaction. "You're under arrest, Doctor!" he yelled over the din. But then something unexpected happened. Agent Miller, who had been trailing Thorne, moved faster. He didn't go for Aris. He shoved Thorne aside and drew his weapon on the cleaner. "FBI! Drop your weapon!" Miller shouted, his voice clear and steady. The cleaner, caught between Miller's gun and the approaching hotel security, hesitated. The standoff lasted only a second, but in that moment, everything changed. The truth was out. The conspiracy was broken, and Aris was no longer the villain of the story. The fallout was immediate and spectacular. The press conference footage was replayed on a loop on every news channel in the world. Senator Thompson was arrested before he even left the hotel, his face pale and slack with shock. The Omnicorp CEO was taken into custody a few hours later, trying to board a private jet to a country with no extradition treaty. The cleaner, a former special ops soldier turned corporate hitman, started talking as soon as a plea deal was on the table. In the chaos, Aris, Ben, and Leo slipped away, meeting Elias in the alley. The weight of the past few weeks seemed to lift off their shoulders all at once. They had done it. They had won. The next day, Aris walked into the FBI field office, but this time she wasn't a suspect. She was the star witness. Agent Thorne was nowhere to be seen. He'd been placed on administrative leave pending an internal investigation for his handling of the case. Agent Miller was the one who took her statement. "I'm sorry for what you went through, Doctor," Miller said, his voice filled with genuine regret. "We were wrong." The hospital board, terrified of a massive lawsuit, offered Aris her job back, along with a hefty settlement and a public apology. She took the settlement. She refused the job. 6 months later, Aris stood inside a small storefront clinic in a working-class neighborhood of Chicago. The paint was still fresh, and the equipment wasn't brand new, but it was all hers. The settlement money, along with a very generous anonymous donation from Elias Vance's best-selling book about the scandal, had been enough to make her dream a reality. The Thorne Community Clinic offered medical care to anyone who walked through the door, regardless of their ability to pay. Lena, who had quit her high-paying hospital job a month after Aris was fired, was her head anesthesiologist. Maria, the veteran nurse who had admired Aris's courage, ran the front desk. Elias walked in carrying a box of pizza. His book was a sensation, and he was now a celebrated journalist, but he looked most at home here with her. He was mostly healed, the scars hidden under his shirt a permanent reminder of how they'd met. "How was the first official day, Doc?" he asked, smiling. "Busy," she said, a tired but happy smile on her face. A kid with asthma, a construction worker who cut his hand open, an elderly woman who just needed someone to listen to her. She looked around her small, bustling clinic. It was perfect. She hadn't gone back to the high-stakes world of a prestigious trauma center. She didn't need the glory or the money. She had found something better. She was practicing medicine on her own terms, for the people who needed it most. She hadn't just cleared her name, she had found her true purpose. In the months that followed, the final pieces fell into place. Ben Carter won a Pulitzer for his reporting, a triumphant capstone on a long and storied career. Agent Miller received a commendation and a promotion for his integrity and investigative work. The Omnicorp scandal led to congressional hearings and new laws on corporate lobbying. One quiet evening, after the last patient had left, Eris stood alone in her clinic. On the wall by her desk was a simple, framed picture of her late brother, smiling. Beneath it was a small plaque with a quote he used to say all the time. "The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing." She had done something. She had faced down a system that tried to crush her and come out the other side stronger. She looked around at the clinic she had built from the ashes of her old life, a place of healing and hope. And for the first time in a very long time, Dr. Eris Thorne felt truly, completely at peace.